All right, well, good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. You are all muted right now, except Oliver, but you're good. You're an FTC guy. I'm not. I know you're not going to get crazy with it. Um, if you do have to say things, just remember you got to unmute yourself. So welcome again to the weekly installment of our Self Growth Saturday. Today we're going to focus on team building. Okay, team building, and I think it's a little timely now that as we are relaunching and then going into phase two of Avoria Prime, we have to always remember the key aspect of teams and the importance of teams. Good morning, my brother from another mother, Skip.
Good morning, y'all.
So we just started. Glad to see y'all. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started here. All right, give me a thumbs up. Let me see my screen. Good. All right. So as usual, hey, look, I got to share the fruit of my life because I wanted to grow on other people's trees, and y'all get the benefit of that today as you do each Saturday because you decide to get up early. You have a resolve for self growth and self improvement, and I appreciate each and every one of you, especially the ones that are consistent in your ways. So let's talk about team building. Okay, team building. Oliver, talk to me. What are some characteristics of the best teams you've been a part of?
It's selfless. Like it's all about the team. The whole purpose of success is the team success, not an individual's particular success.
Yep. Okay, good. Thank you for sharing that. Simon, what about you?
Sacrificial.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. Skip, thoughts?
Um, the best teams all have a cohesive message and vision, and they work.
Ooh,
It's like an orchestra, all in the same sheet of music, different instruments or the different personalities with one conductor. So that's what an optimal team sounds like to me.
that's awesome. And I heard you say the vision, right? And I'm just gonna finish your sense here. They have to measure, right? Because what they measure becomes their vision, right? And so it's clear. There's clarity. We'll talk about clarity a little bit later. But yeah, there's many different characteristics of the best teams. There's a great book called Great Teams. I'm trying to remember the author right now, but he worked for ESPN. He was a journalist, and he chronicled and did a lot of work on teams. And it really was about the vision, the strategy, the growth, how they develop internally their leaders and grow as teams, because that's a key component to all that. Um, but what about a leadership lab, Rebecca? What when you hear leadership lab, what does that mean to you?
To me, I would think that meant the leaders would come together and think of ways to build their teams or lead their teams or the direction they're going. So kind of like a mastermind group.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. Okay. Al, what about you? What do you think of when you hear leadership lab?
Well, I think everybody's got their own personality. And so, you know, as leaders come together, they all kind of bring to the table perhaps a skill or talent or something of value. And as a result, you know, if you have 5 or 10 or 20 or 100 people, you know, you have a cohesive, a combined effort of many people's talents and skills and values. And when you bring it together, it can form a really strong, I think, leadership lab. I
Awesome.
guess that's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a place for growth, right? Because they all great teams have the thing common that where they have a growth mindset. So anybody not know who Jack Welch was? If you don't, that's okay. You know, Jack Welch was brought in the '80s to just revamp GE because GE was a mess. And he needed to do some things with General Electric. Well, a lot of folks thought he was draconian in his methods, and he had to be because it was a mess, and he had to start over, set a new foundation. And the culture that he established was one of growth and teams, and a leadership lab for growth and leader development. And so he took years to do that. And by the end of the '80s and into the '90s, when Fortune 500 companies needed to find CEOs, guess who they went to look for? They went to GE to find those CEOs because Jack Welch produced key high-level executives, and they just kept coming to him for him, and he kept elevating and empowering them and giving them up. He just kept producing them over and over and over again. As part, when I was in the Army, one of the key things obviously was teams, but for officers and enlisted folks at the different ranks, we had to attend specific schools. There were certain requirements that we had criteria before we went on to different ranks. And if you apply it to network marketing, and what we do, it's the same thing. There's certain requirements and criteria that you have to meet to go up in the ranks. I had to attend schools at every rank, had to show excellence in certain jobs, different jobs. And before I could get promoted to the next rank, all those criteria had to be met. Most importantly, the criteria of potential, okay? Potential. Because for me and other, in Tank and Oliver acknowledges is, promotion in the Army wasn't just about what you had done, but it was also about your future potential, okay? Future potential. So let's say that Skip was about to get promoted, right? Skip, I'm gonna promote you, bro. I'm gonna get you promoted here. At the promotion ceremony, I would promote him, and there's a specific verbiage that in the promotion orders, and it says this. It says the Secretary of the Army has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional excellence of Skip Karakas, right? In view of these qualities and his demonstrated leadership potential and dedicated service to the United States Army, he is therefore promoted to the rank of X. You want to be a colonel? You want to be a general? Boom, there you go. But it was demonstrated leadership potential. That was the key. Going up in the ranks, it was all about that potential. It wasn't just what you had done. It's what others saw in you. Okay. So to build great teams, you have to then move forward with training and development. All right. So Clint Betts, come on the mic. Tell me what you think the difference is between training and development.
Good morning, my friend.
Good morning.
Man, my voice is almost gone already. We haven't even begun. I think develop and training, the difference between the two, just from my own experience, I did a whole lot of training, my friend, and no self-development. And that training fell to the wayside because I don't believe for 1 second that if you don't self-develop yourself, figure out who you are, what you are, and whose you are, mainly whose you are, you can take all the training in the world. In other words, you can go to all the educated, you can be a Rhodes Scholar, you can go to the best college, but if you don't have the development within yourself to retain the training you get, it's not going to go anywhere. And I know that from my own experience. So I think development should be always first, and it should always never stop. I don't think we ever fully develop until God says we're developed. So my personal thing is I always need to learn. I learn every day. I need self-development every day. I have ways of doing that. I wake up, morning meditation, read the Bible, all kinds of different things. That's my self-development to keep me, I guess, open-minded enough to retain what the training is. And I've done it backwards. It doesn't work. I've done it backwards for many decades, and it just doesn't work. You have to, in my world, I need to know whose I am, what I'm doing, and more importantly, how I can effectively help other people. If I don't know any self-development of who I am, I'm not even going to know how to help. So that's just the difference for me between the two.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And John Maxwell has a great quote. He says, training is for now, development is for life.
Amen.
Okay? Training is for now, development is for life. Because training is what we need now, right? So as we're going into this phase 2 stuff, hey, what training do we need now as we learn the new software that's coming out or the new comp plan that's coming out? Okay. But then development is for life. There's still some development that needs to be done. If you want to build a business. There's some development there, right? If you want to be a customer, okay, there's some development there still, because you have to do some personal growth constantly if you think you're going to attract other people to be around you that you want to be around you. Okay, so again, training is for now, development is for life. And so, the past, most of y'all know me already, for the last 25 years, I've led teams anywhere from 8 folks to 40 to over 600. And what I found, that the most successful teams are built and developed on 3 principles. And I'm going to tell you them real quick, and then we're going to go deep dive into them. Number 1 is everyone must have an individual responsibility for their own growth. Number 2 is leaders must be certified by other leaders before promotion. And number 3 is teams require connection and challenges to grow. So what does that look like? All right, so let's deep dive in here, and I'm going to reshare my screen again. If I can get back into here. Boom, boom. All right, so here we go. Team building, right? General team building. We're going to go, I'm going to break each one of these down from general and then legacy application here, okay? So what does that look like? Why do you exist? It has to start with self. You have to ask yourself and understand whose you are before you can do anything. What does your life by design look like? Because if you don't understand what your life by design looks like, then you're going to be living a life by default, okay? You can either be a wandering generality or a meaningful specific, like Zig Ziglar used to say. All right? Your core values. What do you stand for, if anything? And write them down. Write them down. This is all things you've heard me say before, okay? Whose are you? Who are you? What do you stand for? Okay? Do you have an accurate assessment for your personal SWOT? A current assessment. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities do you see here in the near future, anywhere from 1, 3, 12 months or plus? And then what are your threats? What threats can derail those opportunities and are getting in your way? It could be yourself. It could be your attitude. It could be other people you're hanging around with, right? It could be that stinking thinking that you can't get out of your head, okay? And it has to change. A big part of your personal growth has to start with an honest assessment of your personal SWOT. And then once you have it, write it down, share it with a couple of people you trust to give you feedback that can hold you accountable to it, and see if they see the same things, right? And if not, what do they see differently? What is misaligned in your life so that you can improve in that way, right? What is your personal growth plan? Your MAP, right? MAP, your measurable action plan. Because let me tell you, all world-class performers have a measurable action plan. And if you want to be a world-class performer, you need that vision. You need an assessment of who you are, whose you are, and you need a measurable action plan. If you don't take personal responsibility and initiative to grow your leadership, why should anybody else? Right? If we tracked everything you did hour by hour, month by month, what would we discover? What would we see? What are your thoughts so far on this first principle? Anyone?
That's so on point on all of these. When you look at, for example, the SWOTs and so on, but the MAP also, measurable action plan. What happens is most of us don't know what personal development is. We think reading a couple of books, throwing information into the brain, and we always translate it into doing. So that's where we throw back into what we're doing here is what I call the anatomy of success, right? In anatomy school, you take a body, you start dissecting, you go layer by layer, tissue by tissue, to the cellular level. That's the science of personal development. If you guys don't have a understanding of what the general anatomy is and a little bit further, you may miss the mark as to what personal development is versus your action plan. And I defer back to that statement. And if you guys need to talk to Luis or me a little bit more about this, the human doing versus the human being. If you get those two verticals crystal clear, your life will be much easier as far as this personal development journey, which is everything. So that was a shameless plug for the human doing for human being.
You got to do it, man. Repetition, ruthless repetition, right? Alan, you're deep in thought, man. Share what you got.
Oh, and I'm unmuted too, huh? Good thing my brain wasn't talking. Right? Okay, actually, so if I'm answering the question that you just asked, if I tracked myself hour by hour by hour, the result would be so less than desirable. It would just be, I think I'm pretty good, but I know that I'm pretty bad. How about that? I think I'm pretty good, but I know that I'm pretty bad because, you know, the problem is I know when someone multitasks, they can't give 100% to anything. They can only give, you know, whatever percentage they can give to whatever piece they're multitasking on. And one of the biggest issues I have in life is the fact that I own 3 businesses. Yay. And so, and they don't stop. And so I'm always got some part of my brain going towards one thing and the other. I'm paring that down. One of the businesses should be sold by the first of next month. That'll be a big deal. But I know that I love that acronym MAP. That was the game changer for me right there. I never really did that, but you know, heard that before. So anyways, the long and short of it is, you know, being disciplined is difficult. It is difficult. I'm a really good salesman, and I can sell myself on why I shouldn't do something better than I can sell myself on why I should. I think that's just human nature. And so when I can get control of that, I think it'll be a more productive instead of just busy, you know, sort of action plan for me.
Thanks for sharing that, man. I appreciate your transparency. And here's the key thing, man. You're self-aware, right? And that's the first step, being self-aware. And now then you do the self-management piece. And then don't try to do it by yourself, right? That's why I said if you have a measurable action plan, after you know whose you are and who you are, and then you go into the vision and the measurable action plan, then enlist the effort of other friends around you. There's a reason that I stay connected with Skip and Ryan constantly. Like, tell me where there's misalignment. Tell me. When I was in the Army, Doylan Dasher was my truth teller. He was my sergeant major. In fact, he still is. I mean, he still says, I'm still your sergeant major. Here's what I'm going to tell you. He still keeps me straight and online, because if he sees some misalignment on who I was created to be and who I say I am, he'll call me out. Why? I've given him that access. Okay. And that's my personal responsibility, my personal, I guess it's gift to myself to say I'm giving access to certain people that I trust fully, that can absolutely come in, get in my face when they need to, right? Because we need that. We need that type of guardrail up.
Can I share something to that, Luis?
Go ahead, man.
I'd like to tell this community I'm very close with Luis, and it's a blessing to me. So what I love about what Luis is teaching is he's a student of his own words. So that's very important, the integrity there. But to your point, Alan, it's something you surfaced that would apply to everybody here, if I could speak to that for a minute. When you talked about multitasking, because this is not full time for most people here, or anybody. Perhaps. So what that means is you're by default having to multitask, aren't you? There's been research and studies, and I do this with my execs, on how to manage time. And here's what happens. You take this for what it's worth. If you want a deeper dive, just hit me up afterwards and we'll talk. We know that the brain works best one task at a time. So Alan, just as an example, I'll pick on you because you surfaced this. When you dedicate time to a task throughout your day and you're singularly focused on that, and then you finish that time slot, let's say an hour, hour 15, whatever, it takes 15 minutes for the brain to recalibrate to the next task. If you do that within an hour, 4 or 5 times a day, 4 or 5 times switches, 15 minutes or 20 minutes to recalibrate per switch, adds another hour to 2 hours to your day, and you're less effective. So if you want to be effective and manage time as an exec, you mono-focus on a task, leave that, go on to the next. Leave that, go on to the next. At the end of the day, you pick up what you couldn't do during those time slots. That's just a frame, work. You have to see how that works for you. But at my executive level, that's what we do. Some of you here know what I'm talking about. And that is latest data and science, which is rich in research. So that's a statistical analysis as well. So just want to share that for all of you guys who are multitasking, if that fits into your schema.
Well, let me tell you what the problem or what the challenge is for me. This bad boy right here. I was reading something the other day, a post by someone in a blog that I read, and it was called Beware of the Ding. What they were talking about is the notifications that we get all freaking day. Telegram, WhatsApp, Messenger, texting, phone call, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And so if you could speak to that, because I have time blocked before. And I've said, okay, this morning when I wake up at 5:30, I'm going to do my thing in the Bible. Then I'm going to take some deep breathing exercises. And at 6:30, I'm going to write claims for 2 straight uninterrupted hours. I can count on 2 fingers the time that I've actually been able to do that, because this thing starts going cuckoo and I'm just, it's just like, oh, that guy needs something. Oh, this guy needs something. And I just get derailed.
So let me help you with that piece, because this is something I'm uber sensitive on. You're right. This thing, right? There's this awesome thing on it where you flick it up and you hit do not disturb, right? And who's sharing their screen and taking the screen for me? Lee, stop sharing your screen. What is? There you go. Thank you. Okay. Do not disturb. The little moon thing, put it on there. What I do is I put it on do not disturb. If I had to do something for an hour and a half, and oh, by the way, the brain can probably only take about 90 minutes max on any one task before you have to give it rest. That's also medically proven. 60 to 90 minutes max. It's called an Altrudian sprint. Okay. And after that, you need a break. So give yourself 90 minutes, put it on silent, put it on, and then put it down away. Put it down away, because what you're probably doing is leaving it up, right? Leaving it up, and the things will still pop up, and that little attention will get you. Well, if you put it down and away, you can't see it, right? You can't see it. You won't hear it, and you just have to be at peace with that. And I'm telling you, man, you will crush on some things when you do it that way. Skip, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what you should do. Let me tell you why, Alan. Let me get into your brain a little bit.
Yep.
Your ego is at stake here, because all of our egos are at stake. Yep. All of us. What I mean by that, and I'm picking on you, Alan, because I'm speaking to myself. You know what this psychologically does to us every time we're dinged? It makes us feel important.
Right.
Makes us feel like we're needed. Feels like. But let me tell you this. Last week, I had a friend who, at 39, dropped dead. 10 days from diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, 10 days later, dead, 39. Wow. Never lived life because he was so busy working his assets off. And you know what? Let me just bring it around to this. If you're not saving someone's life, It's not an emergency. It's a situation. I learned this from John Addison, who's a friend of mine, the CEO of Primerica Financial Services. He says he got a call one day from his secretary as he's going through the terminal and security and stuff. She goes, "We have an emergency." He's like, "What is it?" He says, "We forgot to send this paper. I need your signature." And he said, "Shelly, do not ever call me unless someone's life is on the line. And then I'm the second call. You call 911 first. That's not an emergency. That's a situation. Let's start labeling those things properly," he told her. And that was a life lesson for me. So anyway, I'm going a little deeper than that because we all have this problem. Listen, be humble. We are important, but you know what's most important is that you deliver what you need to do. So as an example, let's say you have an hour, a 90-minute time slot, Alan, that you dedicated slots to. You put your phone down, and then instead of an hour, 90 minutes, you go an hour 15, and then for the last 15, you pick this up, and then you get a breather, and you go to the next phase. Because, and there are always extenuating circumstances, I get, especially you, Alan, running things and things on the go. And perhaps that also talks about your management skills. Why don't you have people having the authority or the skill to make their own decision out in the field? That's another thing to look at, but just some thoughts. But those are a little bit of structure you can meld to fit your schema. But the psychology behind everything that we're doing, you guys, has to be revealed so you understand why you're doing this. Not just do it. If you just do things to do things, you're going to burn out. If you understand why you're doing this, you can sustain that.
So one of the things that I just did while you were talking there, because it actually came up, was I have an iPad on a stand. I'm reaching out to it. You guys can't see it. It's a second screen. Okay. And you know, the iPad picks up everything the iPhone does. And while you were talking, it went ding. So I did turn it off, right? Because it does, you're right. It's silent, but it caught my attention. So I have another question for you.
Yep.
Difficulty on a scale of 1 to 10 to do what you just said with the phone for me is going to be 11, but I can try it. I mean, I'm just being honest, you guys. I'm just being transparent, right? Because I think everybody, a lot of times I'll say what people are thinking because I have no fear from repercussion.
Then Alan, it's a 15-minute block then, or 10-minute block.
Well, so here's my question to you. One of the things that I multitask is claims writing and, you know, the roofing business as I'm, you know, involved in other things, which requires the phone. So I'll be writing a claim, but, you know, I'm waiting for adjusters to call, or I need to call, you know, State Farm or somebody like that. How does that work? Do I just need to take my discipline even deeper to go when it does ding, if it, you know, I mean, how would that work when the very tool that takes me offline is required for the
I would have you take a step back and say, what's your overall goal? Okay, what we're doing is the nuts and bolts. Let's look at the purpose as to why you're at, what is your objective in trying to mitigate time and manage it? What will come out of it? What works for you? What will it look like if you manage your time? And here's the other question. What won't happen if you don't manage time? All right.
Yeah.
So you look at the big picture. To what objective do you want to manage your time? What will it do for you? And if that outweighs the price of uncomfort and change at this time, then do that. But if the other one outweighs, then do that. So you have to be, you know, if I was working with you, Alan, we'd hash this thing out. We'd map it out. We'd itemize and ask you those questions to define those parameters. Go ahead, Luis.
I'll share this question with you just to reflect on, right? And then I'm going to finish up with the teams piece. Is if you say yes to this, what are you saying no to? If you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? Apply that all across. If you're saying yes to answering that text, what are you saying no to? If you're saying yes to answering that email, what are you saying no to? If you're saying yes to just hanging out doing nothing versus, you know, getting on some calls every 5 or 10 minutes, what are you saying no to? Right? And it can be ramifications for the day, for the week, for your life by design. Okay.
Right.
So,
Is that similar to the Tony Robbins pain pleasure principle? What you're saying?
yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with his pain principle thing, but I mean, I'm just on that one. I just take it as far as it's a strategic aspect of it, right? Like Skip said, taking a step back. Yes is a commitment of time, talents, and treasures always. No gives you that back. So if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to, right?
Okay.
And then let's apply this first principle of your individual responsibility, because Alan, I really appreciate your transparency and your candor, because it's about individual responsibility for growth. But what will your business stand for? What will be its purpose, right? You have to start wide, big N before you can get down into the SWOT. And how does it fit your team? What is your plan each week, each month to learn something new or continue learning something, right? Whether it's on weekly Zooms, the upline context, this self-growth Saturday, tell people about it. What are you learning? What are you taking off of your upline's hands so that they can focus on bigger things, right? What does that look like in the team aspect? All right, so that's the first principle. Now, the second principle, certify new leaders with leaders. Principle number one is your personal responsibility for growth. Number two is certifying new leaders with leaders. Look, in the Army, again, it was a leadership lab, right? You had a leadership lab going on, and before leaders were promoted, they had to be certified. I had to be certified every time before I got promoted. And the leader that was above me had already done and been in the position that I was in and knew what to look for and what standards I had to meet. And then I had to do the same for my subordinates. Okay. So, how will you track progress of individual contributors and leaders? Who owns the team and leader development process in your organization? Right. Tank, what do you think on that? What are your thoughts on it as you know, because for you, I know you and really Oliver too, you guys are towards the farther end of your career, going to transition out. How does this transition from Army down to civilian work?
Well, the big thing is I've been listening to everybody's conversation. It's been pretty awesome. And I began to think in my own mind is my actions as a leader will trickle down to my subordinates. So as I work towards building my organization and my team with Avoria Prime, my actions will trickle down to them. What I'm doing, they're doing. What I put an emphasis on, you know, they're going to put an emphasis on. And it's really the same thing in this team piece of, you know, qualifying, you know, my leaders. Like you, prior to getting promoted, I worked in that next level job. I was trained, coached, mentored, and I had that opportunity to work at the next level and prove myself. So to tie that from Army back to our
Hey, hold on a
business.
second, Tank. Hey, somebody is not muted. Can you please check your mics? Because it's very crazy going on here. All right, go ahead, Tank. Sorry about that.
No, no worries. So yeah, anyway, just to, you know, to reiterate the fact that my organization, my team, my subordinates, whatever we want to call it, they will be a direct reflection of me and who I am and what I do. And if I'm that individual that, you know, I'm the same as Alan. I got my phone going, emails, government emails, you name it, everything is going. If I have all that going on when I'm trying to concentrate on something, and that becomes a disruption, I'm showing that action to my team. I'm letting them know that this is an acceptable course of action versus setting it aside and doing. and I'll end with this. I used to be really bad at texting while I was driving and talking on the phone. And I've decided to do a better job of not texting while I'm driving, because I go back to, is this an emergency or is just something that I wanted to do? So I've made it a conscious effort to set my phone down and not pick it up when I'm driving unless I had, I can make a call and put it on, but I don't even do that when I'm driving now. So a lot of times I'll get the texts and the calls from people, and then I'll let them know while I was driving and I'm not doing this anymore. And that's kind of one of the things that's kind of trickled down to my kids. They all got little things that they mount up on and do to do the whole hands free. But it kind of started with Dad throwing it down just a little bit to them. Sorry that took so long.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate it. Oliver, what are your thoughts, man? Thanks for sharing, Tank.
So like to Alan's point there, where he's talking about the distractions. Like, for example, because I have a few NCOs under me, like 4 or 5 E5s. And when I do my developmental counselings, even with the soldiers, one of these contracts that we have amongst each other is, before we go upstairs to the FDC lab on the 2nd floor, I open up my desk, and every single one of these gets locked up in the desk for the whole 1 hour block while we're having that discussion, so that the focus is not on what does Sergeant Major want, what does First Sergeant want, what does this NCO want, God forbid, what does the FDO want, without my helping hand all the freaking time. I put it away, so my focus is on the team. What are we focusing on? What are we doing together as a team? What do we need to develop better? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate that. And look,
that's pretty much what I do.
I know you know this because you show it. You show that person you care that much more when you put that away and the distractions away, right? And you show them that much more that you do that. Okay, well let's look at the legacy application to this, right? Do you know what the requirements are for each rank? Okay, there's a new comp plan coming out. Okay, so we're going to have to learn and we're going to have to grow. We're going to have to know the differences and be able to communicate that to our teams, right? How are your aspirations and goals aligned with the rank requirements? Some people might have these great aspirational goals, and it's just not aligned with who they are or realistic, right? You have to be realistic in how you're doing it. And if you're sharing it with the right people, then they should hold you accountable to that. How are you going to track the progress of the affiliates that want to grow, right? Al Franklin has a great system of tracking that, right? Because he knows who wants to grow. And if they don't, it's like, okay, good. Let me know when you need something. But if not, he moves on to the people that want to grow. He invests in the people that want to grow. Do we have the designated leaders? Oh, by the way, it goes back to your individual responsibility of your SWAT. If your leaders know what your strengths and weaknesses are, then we know where we can plug you in the organization when we need something. Because the worst thing we can do is give somebody a task or a requirement, project, whatever, and it does not align with their strengths. In fact, it goes right against their weaknesses. But because they can make it happen and they like to do, they just want to maybe just appease you, they'll do it, but it will drain their energy. It will drain them miserably. Okay. So understand what their strengths and weaknesses are so you can put them towards those strengths and weaknesses. And oh, by the way, when you do an overall assessment of your team and your leaders, you know where the egos are, right? And you know what their strengths are. And oh, by the way, when you do that, then you can realize, hey, I have some gaps over here. I got a gap in this ability. I have a gap in this ability. I need to go find some egos that have that ability and are willing to be part of this organization so that we can be that much stronger, right? So who are those leaders in your organization and how are you assessing the organization to be able to do that? How much time do you spend on a weekly basis educating, equipping, and certifying your downline affiliates who want to grow, right? By the way, we got some steps and processes and systems in place that can help you do that. Whether it's brand new person coming in whether it's just trying to get their 3 for free, whether it's building the business. There are systems in place to be able to help you do that. Ryan, you got any thoughts? I see you coming back on, man.
Oh man, this is always such good stuff, bro. And I already knew it was gonna be because you sent your slides. Oh shoot.
You good?
Can you hear
You're
me?
on.
Oh,
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, we got
everybody
you.
was like kind of pointing like they couldn't hear. So good. All right. Yeah, a lot of people are shaking their heads. That's weird, but you can hear me?
I got you.
Okay.
I got you good.
Good. All right.
Just barely can hear him.
Okay.
Let's see. How about that? Is that better? All right. There you go. Again, I knew this was going to be powerful today because I get the privilege of seeing your content before we go live. And man, there's so many things I could. I don't want to turn this into another hour, but you're hitting on so many powerful things. Let me just say, I'll share 3 thoughts. Okay. Most liberating time in my life as an entrepreneur, as a leader, is when I learned which apps were allowed to give me notifications and which ones weren't. People important to me know how to get a hold of me via text. Apps don't need to notify me. And as soon as I figured that out, my life changed radically. I mean, literally, my productivity went to another level with less time. I got twice as productive in half the time, honest to God's truth. And where it clicked for me is I realized I was robbing from the people I love most by letting people I don't love most rob from me. I want to spend you call it margin, Luis, and I love it. You know who deserves my margin? Jolene and Avery and Savannah. That's who deserves my margin, not random interruptions. Because if you need me, you can text me. And if you're not texting me, you're an interruption, right? If you're in my inner circle, you've got my cell phone number. And if you need to use Messenger on a quote social app to get me, you're an interruption. You're not a priority, right? So that was life-changing for me. So that's the first thing I'd say. Here's the second thing I'd say. From a leadership standpoint, to lead in this business and in any other, if you're leading people, your most effective form of leadership is what we call delegation leadership, empowerment leadership, where you can empower others, right? And so at the end of the day, some of the finest leaders I've been able to glean from are the ones who told their team, don't call me until you can defend the fact that you've exhausted every attempt to find the answer before you called me. And some of the biggest network marketers I've ever been mentored by, that was their MO. When they had new team members getting started, if there was a system, and I think we've got a decent one, they said, look, you should be able to find 99% of what you're going to need from the system. And so if you're going to call me, be prepared to explain to me where the system failed you before you start telling me what you need from me. Really powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. Last thing I want to say, and these things kind of sequence together, right? So the third thing is this. You have to model the kind of leadership you want in your organization, right? We have a phrase in this industry, the speed of the leader is the speed of the group. Here's what can't happen. I think a lot of times we reduce, we put a lid. Let's go to Maxwell, right? We actually, our behavior actually puts a lid on our team, because if we don't behave in a way that shows them what it looks like to take ownership of their own business, now they have a dependent business instead of an independent business, meaning someone else has created a lid. They can go be an employee to do that, right? Nobody becomes an entrepreneur because they want a lower lid, right? That's a fact, Jack. And so, what's important is we have to let the people who want to run with us. But if we slow ourselves down because we're taking care of a lot of things for people that they could take care of themselves, here's what ultimately happens. You lose your influence over your real runners that can change the game for you. Because here's what will happen. People that want to come alongside and run with you, they're going to hear your cadence, right? Like you always talk about the art of the swing, Luis, right? Where the coxswain, if somebody was not in the boat or in a boat, 17 length back, you're not going to hear the coxswain in my boat. As a leader, the people running with you have to hear your voice. Stroke, stroke, stroke. Well, if you're not leading from the front, your most valuable players have outpaced you and they don't even hear your voice anymore. You're going, go, man, go. And they're freaking 17 laps ahead of you because you haven't harnessed some of these disciplines right? It will allow the most effective runners to come run alongside of you. And so what happens is the really goal-oriented ones who have done their personal development and they've created some of these disciplines in their lives, guess what they do? They outrun you. And that's a good thing, but ultimately if your desire is to have impact, you want to at least run with them so that you can grow, right? And so anyway, I'm done, but thanks for letting me share. I love this stuff,
man.
man.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it because it's, again, you saw my slide, so it's going right into the next one, right? Because, principle 1 is about everyone takes personal responsibility for growth. Principle 2, certify new leaders with leaders. And then principle number 3, teams require connection and challenges to grow. Okay, teams require connection and challenges to grow. So how will you roll well and win? Okay, in the Army, there was a lot of the planners and the Jedi Knights that do all the war plans and all this stuff. They had this crazy mantra about roll well and live from Ben-Hur, right? Where, they're in the bow and they're rowing, and the centurion saying, if you roll well, you will live. If not, you will die, right? Well, I never liked that mantra. I was like, what? Why do I want to come to this work environment? To just row crazy and then just die? Come on, son. So I read a great book called The Boys in the Boat. If you haven't read it, it's a great leadership book about the 1932 University of Washington crew team that went to the Olympics. And their mantra was row well and win. Okay, row well and win together. And how the coach put them in all different positions. I mean, even to the last week before the Olympics, so that they can get in the right swing. Because when a crew is in the swing, man, that boat is just flying across the water. They can do 2,000 meters in less than 2 minutes. I mean, it's just flying, right? And so will your team row well and win? Do you know who the coxswain is, who the stroke is, who the seven position is, who the powerhouses are, who the bow pairs are? Who are those people in the boat? And oh, by the way, the coach is never in the boat, right? The coach is never in the boat. And when you got to kick it up a notch and give us 10 big ones, and everybody's putting their oars in the water at the same time, because here's what happens when you don't. If one person puts the oar in a bad direction at the bad time, it's called catching a crab. And it's not good. It's not good. Specifically to that individual, because that individual either is going to break some ribs or is going to get flipped out of the boat, or worse, the entire boat can flip because of one person catching a crab and not being in the swing with everybody else. So how are you going to keep the crew, your team, in the swing? Well, you got to keep them connected. You got to give them challenges to grow together. One of my dearest mentors, Ken Camper, he's a 2-star general now. Oliver knows him because he was our brigade commander in Fort Lewis. But he would find crisis situations to help the teams grow. And so I had a captain one time who, for some reason, his arms room, so every unit had an arms room where all the weapons were kept, all the all arms weapons were kept. And there was, tight lock is like a safe and all these security measures. Well, twice this particular one was left unlocked overnight. And the alarm goes off, the military police gets called, blah, 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 all this stuff. And so he needed to teach that captain a lesson. So he brought us in, and him and I talked about it before on how he was going to use this for everybody else. And he sat down because he wanted to hear if the captain was going to own his error and mistakes. And at first he wasn't, but then he realized that he wasn't just trying to bash him or crush him on it, but he wanted to teach him a lesson. He just needed to own it. And so he did. And so what happened, what he had the captain do is like, hey, I want you to write an email of your lessons learned and what you're going to do to correct the issue so it doesn't happen again, because it could be a systematic issue that we have across the regiment, right? And he says, and when you send that email, I want you to send it to all 30 of your peer captain commanders. And I want you to put me and your commander on the CC line. And when you send that, I'm going to come over top you with that email and reinforce the lessons you have learned so that we can promulgate the lessons throughout the organization. And he did that in just an amazing way. And it was a great way to learn because it was a safe environment to fail. and people took ownership, and then everybody learned from mistakes, right? So what challenges are we learning from? Are we seeing it as an opportunity, or are we seeing them as crisis, right? And then I had another commander, General Brooks. He was a commander in Korea right before I got out of the Army, and he had this awesome concept of disruptive innovation, right? Now, when people were in it, a lot of people didn't think it was awesome because it was disruptive, and he didn't play. And one time the Army told us that our headquarters, which was about, I don't know, 6,000 people, had to reduce by 25% within a year. So he comes in, we bring the whole staff in, and he says, we ain't gonna wait a year. I want the plan on how we're gonna do this in 90 days. Go. And we're like, what? Well, he created this crisis because everybody was, oh my gosh, how are we gonna do this? And he said, look, here's why we're gonna do this. Because the sooner we get rid of this ankle biter, the sooner we can get back to war fighting and developing these plans. Because if we stretch it out a year, it'll take a year and it'll be a burden for us for a year, right? So it's like Parkinson's law in business. Any task that you give it time will take up that time, right? If you give a task 3 months, it's going to take 3 months when you know you can do it in one. So how are you going to connect and challenge your teams, right? Do you know the 5 behaviors of this functional team? And do you see them in your team, right? If you haven't read Patrick Lencioni's book on 5 behaviors of this functional team, read it. And then the second one is called The Advantage, because it helps you figure out the difference in that. And here's a quick lay down of that. Dysfunctional teams have absence of trust among team members because they don't trust each other. Trust is always the foundation of great organizations. If you don't have that, you have nothing. Number 2 is fear of conflict. They don't know how to have productive, healthy conflict. So you add trust, lack of trust, you add fear of conflict, and then lack of commitment. People aren't committed. They don't trust you. They don't know how to have productive conflict. They're always at each other, and then so they lack commitment. And then when all that happens, then they avoid accountability. They don't hold each other accountable. They just point fingers. They just point fingers, and nobody takes ownership and learns from it. And the 5th level is then inattention to results. Nobody's watching it. Nobody's taking care of it. There's no focus on delivering measurable results, whether it's a weekly accountability meeting, whatever it is. They're just not looking at it. Because the opposite is the 4 disciplines of organizational health. And the first one is build cohesive leadership team, right? Everything we've been talking about this morning. Individual responsibility for each leader. Then how do you build the team? How do you connect and challenge your team? And then how do you keep clarity throughout that team, right? How do you create that clarity in your message and what you're trying to do and what you want to do? How do you over communicate that? And how do you reinforce that clarity to make sure that you have an effective team, right? And so how can we effectively challenge each other on a weekly basis, right? Who wants to be challenged? We have a new phase coming up. There's going to be challenges. Hey, I'm just letting you know, okay? I can see the ball. I can see the 8 ball. There's challenges will happen. Some software might not work right at first. It's okay. If you know the system, you know how to do the processes, and you know how to work through it before you call your upline, right? How can we foster team building events in the future, whether it's forums like this or getting together in person when we have opportunities to get together if we're traveling around the country? How do we enable that growth and need for change and anticipate the change, right? Anticipate right now. There's going to be some naysayers. There's going to be some haters. There's going to be some people that don't believe, hey, cut sling, just cut, right? If they don't want to be part of it, then they don't need to be part of it. You don't have to be, treat everybody with dignity and respect, but we're not here to convince. We qualify and sort. That's it. Qualify and sort. We're not here to convince anybody. If I got to convince you that you need a life by design, then you don't get it, right? If you don't have the energy, the wasta, the passion to live your own life by design and you have your own dream life by design, I can't help you. I can't help you. Right. And so, how do we stay connected with Avoria Prime and become an influential team of teams? We're a team of bigger teams. So, how does Legacy Launchpad, how does this community become influential in the bigger team, in the team of teams? And how do we do that? All right. Thoughts, ideas, questions?
I just wanted to say that these lessons can be applied to every organization on planet Earth, from our military to our government to our businesses that we run that are not NWM businesses, to obviously our team building exercises. I've got a friend on here right now. You guys probably see his name, Andrew. He is not part of our organization, but I texted him because I know he loves personal growth and development, and I wanted him to hear just how studly you are, Mr. Rivera.
That's why I got this guy right here.
Yeah.
All right? He's on.
Honestly, man, some incredible things that can be applied to our everyday life. Congratulations and thanks.
Yep, my pleasure, friend. Thank you.
Hey, if I could speak to Alan, great point, and Luis, absolutely. I've been around the block in this space as well. This is world-class stuff. So don't let the entry price fool you. I know what the ticket item is for this, for a seat at this table. So just take that for what it's worth. But keep this in mind, Alan, in addition to all organizations, this is also applicable. It goes from the boardroom to the bedroom, as I call it. Talk about personal relationships. When you can have a dynamic with your family that operates in this holistic, unified vision. And that way you become authentic because you're not a prince at work and an ass at home, you know, that sort of thing. We become the same person, authentic. So don't forget to add that layer into it, because that's authentic leadership.
Thank you for that. Tyson, any thoughts? I saw you got unmuted.
Yeah. I was just really saying that, Louis, excellent training, and what's amazing about what you're saying is that I'm a armchair general military buff. I was never in the military, but I read all of the books, and the McChrystals, that Team of Team book, I bought that book, and what you're saying is so powerful is that this is the perfect dynamic by which we actually create leadership at all levels. You cannot be in person, you cannot be in the direct sales, especially direct sales, and not develop yourself and lead. It's almost impossible. You know what I mean? And the culture that you're creating, and Ryan and everyone's creating, is beautiful because it's interesting. I remember back in the day where the guys who were $1 million earners were still sitting in the front of the room taking notes. That was back in the day, right? And this reminds me of that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we're here up Saturday morning, taking notes, professionally developing ourselves. So Louis, heads up, proud pro, man. Admire your courage, man. I think we serve the country, and how you're breaking down the leadership dynamic at all levels. And that's one of the things that I think this industry's gotten away from, that the military and other corporate organizations understand, is that unless you're developing from the bottom up, you can't sustain an operations, which is great.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for that. And John Maxwell, even now, he gets in the front and he still uses the legal pad, and he'll take Jim Rome, before he passed away, Zig Ziglar, they were in the front row because they're just lifelong learners.
Right.
It's a growth mindset. It's about the process, not the results, right?
Right.
But thank you for that. I appreciate it. Lucia, you have anything to say? You're unmuted.
Yes. I've been taking notes, as always, listening. Great stuff. And I'm coming from it from a different perspective because I'm a woman. I didn't have that upbringing with the military, or that, not saying military, but that structure. Okay. I didn't have that. but I had it in life because, you know, of my jobs and management and having teams and people that I had to, you know, watch and grow them too successfully to be leaders, right? And it's mindset. It comes down to your mindset, you know, and then whose you are, which I got from the very beginning, is what we all have to look at. Like, what's our purpose? Where do we want to be, you know? And like you said, training for now and developing for life. We got it all wrong when we were taught back in the day, you know. It's like developing your training for life is what you need to do from the get-go and teaching the kids now. So it's a lot, but it's very doable if you map it out like you said. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Any others before we close out for Saturday morning?
Well, yeah, one last item to what everyone is talking about. In terms of taking notes, Tyson, I appreciate what you're saying. That was so on point, and it threw me back to the old school days when we would sit up front and we fight to get into the room first, right, and so on. But hopefully we'll recreate those things, you know, version 2.0. But anyway, when you talk about taking notes, Tyson, it's so key, and Lucia, you're saying this as well. Imagine this. Imagine the circle is all the things that you know, and how all of the results you're getting and failures that you're having are within that circle. So the answers are outside of that circle. When you are engaging with somebody, hear anything, take a look at how can you expand your circle, because your answer to your next thing is where it's in the wheelhouse of what you don't know. So take notes, because the answer, don't look at what people are telling you that you agree with. Critical thinking allows you to engage someone to see, what do you know that I don't know that I need to know? And that's a great way to max. And you can, if you have that frame of mind, you can learn something from a child. It applies across the board. So that's a great skill set and perspective to realize what you know is giving you the results that you've gotten. Is there an area you can improve? Then the answer lies outside of what you know. Step into what you don't know. Be here.
And so thank you for all that. Greatly appreciate the encouragement. And the last thing is the application piece, right? So what are you doing to take responsibility for your personal growth? You know, who are the Eagles in your organization, and how are you certifying them, even in the network marketing business? And then what are you doing on a daily, weekly basis to connect and challenge your team to establish a healthy culture of growth? Okay. And just put those 3 principles to work. You can put it on notes, but it doesn't matter if you put it on notes if you don't apply any of it. Just take one thing and apply it this week, and then move forward in your growth.
That's all I got. This was amazing. You guys are amazing. Love you guys. God bless you guys. Thanks again, Luis. Phenomenal. Thanks for everybody who was willing to you know, kind of share this morning. You guys are all amazing. This is a phenomenal community, and I'm just proud and grateful to get to be a part of it. Love you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.